Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I am Mad Capper and this is another video on Raid Shadow Legends and another in our series of I Built Them So You Don't Have To. Today we're going to go over Bloodfeather. Bloodfeather is a Force Affinity epic attack-based champion of the Orc faction. So let's jump in, take a look at her, and we'll talk about what she can do. So first thing about Bloodfeather is you've probably had her on your account if you played the game for any length of time. Bloodfeather is one of the 4 epic champions needed to be able to fuse Rhazin. Therefore, most of you have probably had her, and without second thought have fed her up to the great god Rhazin and never looked back, and frankly, you're doing the right thing. However, for those of you who want to see what kind of abilities she can do on her own, let's take a look. First of all, her HP 13875 is a little bit on the low side. It does make building her out a little bit difficult, but it's still not at the critical mass level, I would say. Her attack at 1542 is pretty good, and as you'll see in the video, she does have some pretty good multipliers on her damage. Defense 837 is underwhelming, but pretty typical, and probably higher than many of the attack-based champions we featured on this channel. Speed of 102 is great. Absolutely love that. Over 100 speed on an epic champion is a far and few between thing, and means that you can absolutely build her out many different ways with that increased speed. Crit rate, crit damage, resist, all pretty typical. Her kit features a faction Crips ally crit rate by 20%, and her A3, which is places a 30% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns, decreases the target's true meter by 30%, has an extra 20% chance of inflicting a critical hit, and that's bookable to a 4-turn cooldown. Her A2 attacks one enemy, has an extra 20% chance of inflicting a critical hit, places a 60% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns, bookable to a 3-turn cooldown. And finally, her A1, which just has that extra 20% chance of inflicting a critical hit. Now, normally at this point, I would go and show you my build with her, but because I'm actually taking her with 2 different builds to do 2 different places, I'll show you in the actual video. So we're going to take her to Faction Wars, where we're going to build her out using her aura. So we're going to build her out to 60% crit rate, because she's got a 20% crit rate aura, plus the extra 20% chance of inflicting a critical hit, which effectively means I can build her, crit rate to 60% to still achieve 100% crit rate in the battle. Then we're going to take her to the arena and the dungeons, and we're going to show her with an 80% crit rate where we lose the aura, but we still have that extra 20% chance to inflict a critical hit. So the first place we're going to take her into is the Faction Wars Crypt. As you can see, we have her in Cruel Gear, and more importantly, we have her set to 60% crit rate for this test. Because her Faction Wars aura, which gives you 20% crit rate, and her abilities that are a extra 20% chance to crit, you can build her out to 60%, which means we can still get that 4K attack, much better speed, and still really good crit damage. Obviously, I think we were at 298 or 288. Amazing speed, and still have that accuracy, because at the higher levels of Faction War, she's not going to be one-shotting champs, so she's actually going to land those debuffs that otherwise don't land. The Cruel Gear, of course, is just going to add damage to it and give us an opportunity to build this champion out stronger and more. It makes the whole team better, because now I can build out all the champions at less than 100% crit rate and still get what I need for the run. So this is stage 16. I had only 1-starred this prior to leveling her up to 6-star. So we're going to see what she can do with that A1. Pretty good, about 60%. Also a decreased speed on Shirmani, which she is probably the most dangerous. And again, now Vrask gets to heal. I think as a permanent solution for this, I will definitely build out the whole team around her aura, because I think that way I can really pump up the heals from Vrask and the damage from Seer. Currently, no one on this team is used anywhere than here, so I think it's going to be really helpful for me. And we're going to speed this up. So you kind of see where she's coming from. You're going to, it's not sexy, but the fact is she's adding that extra crit rate. So we're going to actually time jump so that you don't have to suffer through this whole thing. And I'll meet you, spoiler alert, in a couple of levels. And by our powers combined, we end up in stage 18, level 3. Magic of the Editor. Not powers combined, actually, it's just one power. It's called the Editor and Cut Tool, which I should use more often because I gab on way too long. So here we are. First of all, you'll notice that my team's not speed tuned, which is stupid. Zargala should go ahead of her so that she can debuff first. But honestly, I was just testing this out, so I wasn't sure. Problem number 2, trying to stun on a weak hit. Probably not very good. Thankfully, Seer can erase a lot of the person's mistakes. And then here I go. It's like, let me weak hit again. There's 3 champions. Let me go for the one that I can't hit. I think the reason why I did that is because I was less worried about Seeker's damage because we're trying to 3-star, and then I knew that I could delete. Is that Defiled Sinner or Karam? I don't know. He hits hard on this level, so just wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to end up dead. And then from here, I'm feeling pretty good, to be honest with you. I'm not really concerned. We're just going to do some deletion. And then boom. So we finished 18. We ran out of keys. I did use another key later in the night after I got my advanced quest keys and did not finish 19. So, but it did get me 3 stages just from having another 6-star. But I think she was a big part of it. So there's my faction wars. Yes, my fine friends. It's the Fire Knight. I don't know why I did that. So Fire Knight. I think I need sleep. Fire Knight is kind of the only place in a dungeon I'd even consider using her. She's a single target nuker, no multi-hit, so she's not very useful anywhere, including the Fire Knight as far as her mechanism. But she does have one ability, and we'll kind of see it here. With this team, probably not a big deal, but I can see a scenario where you've got a lure at like 205, you've barely got over that 200, and you're trying to get that 2-to-1 turn ratio on the Fire Knight to make sure that you're continually dropping the turn meter. And in that scenario, I think that's where she'd be useful because she does have that decreased speed. So if we kind of go through here, and just to give you an idea, like this is, there's a Heart Seeker. So we did a debuff, a Heart Seeker. We used her turn meter reduction. Rhodos was the only one who did anything multi-hit. Very ugly. And then we all nearly died. So I was probably swearing in the original video, but thankfully I can use the power of the editor. And now everyone's been stopping stupid, and boom, there we've got the turn meter, so he's open. Now we've got the decreased speed, and this is what I wanted to mention. I have fast enough speed that it's irrelevant. I don't need her in here. But if you were in a very select scenario where you didn't quite have enough speed to 2-turn with, say, an Allure, or even a Lysandra, but an Allure especially because you can weak hit, that decreased speed will just give you extra opportunity because it's slowing his turn rate down so that you'll get more hits in. And that's important when fighting against a Fire Knight. It's one of the main mechanisms of killing him is to not let him take a turn. So that's the only scenario that I'd say, yeah, useful. By the way, that's an OP piece. I love it. It's going to land double resistance and be useless to me. Well, maybe broken set. But, man, the potential of hitting like a double crit rate or a triple accuracy, loving it. So that's her in Fire Knight. Wouldn't recommend it for that, but I think you can. She's got some usability there. Before we jump in the arena, let's take a look at her changed out kit. We saw what we were using in the arena. In the Faction Wars. Now we can see arena. You see that 80% now on the crit rate instead of 60% because she's not getting the aura. 285 crit damage, 240 accuracy, 4767 attack, 32,000 health, and the 168 speed. And for her masteries, which didn't change through all scenarios, we see here, this is a kind of my standard. I don't have a standard build. That's a lie. I shouldn't even lie to you like that. She has debuffs, so we go down this rate, especially Faction Wars, where she's not one-shotting stuff. And then we go down the nuking stage. I prefer Helm Smasher. And then we've got the critical, or what is it, the ambush? Yeah, Ruthless Ambush, 8%. I like that on the first hit more than I like the 100% health, 5%, just because we typically want things to die in one hit, so it's kind of my preference. You could make an argument for Flawless Execution, but you would have to negate Kill Streak, which isn't always good, especially for single target nukers who might be trying to take multiple turns on enemies. You'd have to take the shield, which is okay, so you just have to kind of run down this way. For single target champions, I understand. I prefer Helm Smasher still, but I understand using flawless execution. So it's up to you guys to decide. Typically, I would say earlier game, flawless. As you progress later game, Helm Smasher. The second champion I want to show, because we're going to do direct comparison, we're going to do a Knight Errant. And you can see very similar masteries, although I kind of had a different mindset. So you see I have these two pieces here. But I would definitely go down the same route as her with it. And you can see the same route here. As for his artifacts, he's wearing Rhodos's gear. So 35,000 HP, 4,500 attack. Who cares about defense? 163 speed, crit rate of 107. Sorry, it's a little over. We'll have to deal with it. 240 crit damage, 241 accuracy. That 241 accuracy is important, of course, because he lands that weaken and then hits with his A3, so you want to be able to see that that damage occur. Finally, let's show Rhodos. Wow, man, Kappa, that armor looks strikingly familiar. Yes, it is the exact same I had on Knight Errant because it's his armor. This is the champion I usually run this on. So a little bit different on the banner and the accessories side, but you see, I do run a little bit of resistance on him on purpose. I've chosen that over an attack banner, A, because of the speed I have on that banner, and B, it just keeps the other team honest, which doesn't help against Trunda, but does help against a lot of champions who are trying to safe play, accuracy debuffs with 200 accuracy. This just keeps him honest. And I have tried him up to 400 resist, but honestly, if I'm not building him 700 resist, I don't think it's really worth it at this level. 25k HP, 5,000, just shy of 5,000 attack, and actually has pretty good defense, 2,500, oddly enough. Speed 160 with the 253 crit rate. So those are the champions we're going to compare in the arena. So here we're going to do an undebuffed team. Unstripped either. We're going to do A3 straight on Ray through shield. 63 250, pretty good damage. So we're going to back out and do the same with Rhodos. Okay, scenario 2. Also now this time with Rhodos on his A3. And 87 173, significant different damage on the A3 versus A3 in test 1. Test 3, time to test the A2. So we know the A2 hits harder from the other areas. So boom, 106837. Keep in mind, Rhodos has a shield breaker. She does not. I use a lot of Rhodos comps where I don't bring a debuffer. So she does not have shield breaker and he does. That's a huge difference on top of that. And test 4, we are now testing the A2 on Rhodos. And through the shield, 65 688. So a considerable difference on the A2s. Obviously, it's her harder hitting ability. So now we're actually going to bring in a buff strip. And we're going to test their raw damages without anything in the way. But we're not going to do a debuff, just a strip to get kind of what the numbers are between the two of them. Okay, it's time to... And then we're just going to go hard hit versus hard hit. So there's her 127 586 with her A2. Now we're going to switch over to Rhodos for his A3, which is his harder hitting ability. And but 127, that's a pretty substantial number. 127 586. And sidebar, please don't tell Manable about this boosting. I'm pretty sure Boba is feeling really good about himself. He's gonna see it. I've attacked him like 6 times. He's gonna love it. He's bragging to his friends, his clanmates. He's like, I finally made gold 4. People losing all the time to my defense. It's excellent. So we got Syl there. I think we were thinking of testing against her somewhere in this test. But let's see what Rhodos' A3 can do versus a buff stripped Ray. We want to see this damage as well, right? So keep that in mind. 115, 170. Back pocket that baby. And boom, 105. So that was 127 versus 105. Despite his ignore defense, she hit harder. Now she has more crit damage, but that's the whole point of her kit, is that you can make more crit damage. So, well, you know what's going to happen. We got to do another test. So we'll be right back. No, really, Clan. He hit me like 8 times. Could not beat me. See all the difference. Okay, we want to try it with Syl. Higher defense champion. So you can see that much higher. 58. Did resist the debuff. So does confirm that she does put the debuff before attacking. And that's probably what the big damage difference was on hers versus, even though he's ignoring defense versus debuff. Um, Obviously, which is strange to me. The 60% debuff seems to be a more significant than the 60% ignore defense. I don't know if that feels right, but obviously it makes that A2 powerful. That's important to note because I don't think all champions put the debuff before attacking, and we've kind of seen there, even though it was resisted in that hit, which is why the damage here is going to be pretty similar. Let's go, Rotos. Let's go. Okay, we're gonna kill Ray. Bye, Ray. So, I mean, boom. That doesn't need to resist. You can't resist it. So he hit a little bit harder, which you got to keep that in mind because with her extra damage on that A2 comes from the debuff, the buffs, the defense down. But you can't guarantee it because you're not going to build her out in arena with enough accuracy that she's always going to debuff. So that's something to keep in mind. Anyway, we're gonna kill Bebach here. We're gonna move on because we've been fighting him enough, and we're gonna show her versus Knight Errant in a duel of the hard hitters. All right, we actually had to take Bloodfeather out because we were getting speed cut. Obviously, you want to fashion your team so that you don't speed to them, which means sometimes giving up a little bit. But here we go. 138. What is he gonna do? 143, 155. So about 5k difference. So still the reigning champ. He puts the weaken first. So he does have a little bit of that. She puts the defense down. But overall, you can see pretty amazing damage from him. He's still the winner. But is he? Because his A2 stuns, her A2 hits, or her A3 hits really hard with the speed decrease. You could make an argument for both. I think at the end of the day, the winner's probably Bloodfeather due to her faction and her faction wars abilities. My final thoughts on Bloodfeather: she does suffer from the same thing that Ripper and Knight Errant do. And a lot of these single target nukers, if they don't have a secondary mechanism, they become a lot less useful. And you really have to work to be able to use them. And an AoE nuke is just so much easier. And if you don't have an AoE nuke, you need to have a secondary mechanism. I think a Krutraxa, a perfect example, has a block revive and an extra turn. Even her baby Excruciator has a block revive. So at least there's a secondary mechanism that you're bringing to the fight. With Bloodfeather and with Ripper and with Knight Errant, you're really not bringing that secondary mechanism. Their debuffs are so situational because typically they're one-shotting. And the one area where I say in the arena is useful, and I didn't really say this for the previous two, if you have that single target nuker with the mechanism, especially extra turn like Krutraxa and Rotos, then this could be a different story. And I think then all three of them would be very usable as a second champion to bring in there. Think about it. You bring Rotos in, you kill the first champion, you kill the second champion, she kills the third champion. Or Rotos, you kill the first champion, you don't quite kill the second champion. Well, guess what? You're going to get a second champion dead. If you can kill two champions before they take a turn, you've got a good chance of winning the fight. There's a few scenarios where you might still be in trouble, but for most scenarios, that's pretty good. You still do need a strip champion, I think. And so Madame Saris, because you're getting the strip and the debuff at the same time, would be preferential. And because of that, there's still a limited overall general usefulness in the arena. But there is a niche ability for Bloodfeather, I think, out there. And the good news is I feel like she's very usable in Faction Wars. Her dungeon, I mean, there was that one scenario where we used her in the Fire Knight, very, very niche, very specific, but for the most part, not very good in the dungeons, other than a hard-hitting nuker. So I don't feel bad about building her up because I think in Faction Wars, her kit allowing you to build at 60% crit rate, that's pretty formidable. I think that if I were to min-max her, I could probably get her to about 310 crit damage, I want to say. Maybe more, depending on what gear I stole to do so. And even the other champions, I could probably get Seer pretty close, and I could probably get Vrask with way more HP because I only have to build them to 80% crit rate. And I think that's a huge unstated bonus. And a lot of people like talking about speed auras and defense and HP auras and even attack auras. But I think in this scenario, I really feel like that crit rate aura is the way to go for orcs. I'm going to find out. I made it up to 19. We're going to build out the other two champions I'm using, and hopefully that'll bring me to 21, and then I'll feel really good about building Bloodfeather. But we're really going to min-max her when it comes to that. That said, probably for most of you, it's going to be a Vault champion or just a Faction Wars champion, which is okay, right? Being able to build her out just for Faction Wars is absolutely reliable and feasible, and I think she outshines the Ripper and the Knight Errant in that respect. Also, keep in mind, Knight Errant's damage depends on him having full health. She can do that damage so long as she's alive, and I think that's a big piece to be stated, especially going through Faction Wars, where you're invariably going to take some damage. Finally, what would I do to make her better? Well, I think her toolkit I really like. I'm not a fan of her HP, but it's an epic, so I'm okay with these stats. I'm okay. I love the speed. Love the aura. Her A1 is her A1, whatever. But these two have a very simple change I would do to make them usable. Attacks one enemy, places a 30% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns, decreases the target's turn meter, has an extra chance of 20% chance of inflicting a critical hit. If this ability kills the enemy, places a decreased speed on all enemies. Done. A2. Attacks one enemy, has an extra 20% chance of inflicting a critical hit, places a 60% decreased debuff for 2 turns. If this ability kills the enemy, places a decreased defense on all enemies. Done. That's how I would play this ability. The use of Bloodfeather would go up exponentially if you had added those two abilities to her toolkit. I think she would be usable in Arena. I think she would be powerful in certain comps. I think she would come a little bit closer to meta. Whereas right now, I feel like she doesn't have a home. And that's the difference between her and Padma, for example. Padma having that attack up on all champions if it's critical. I'm not even going that far. I don't think if it's critical would be a little bit too much because she doesn't have to build 100% crit rate, so that might be a little bit too OP. But having that if it kills an enemy, having a decreased defense, I think that's perfectly reasonable, reliable, and would make this champion absolutely 10 times better and probably usable and probably considered in a lot more meta. So those are my thoughts on Bloodfeather. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Please let me know in the comments down below. Also, I'd really appreciate it if you liked and subscribed and even ring that bell for notification. It really helps me out with the YouTube algorithm and with the content creator program. We are marching ever steadily. I think we're 356 subscribers away from hitting the next mark on the content creator program. So that would really help me. The biggest thing is then I get gems to give away to you guys. So when I hit 2,000, you guys win. Please help me get there. And finally, I normally talk about being safe, and please be safe. But today I want to talk to you about voting. I'm not an American, but there is a very important election coming up. And I'm not here to play partisan. I don't care. I don't care who you vote for. That's for you and your beliefs. But what I do believe is that you must vote. I think voting is the most important thing you can do in a democracy to uphold the democracy. And we could have debates all day about whether or not representative and electoral college, that is fundamentally sound. But regardless of all that, at the end of the day, voting makes a difference. If nobody votes, nobody wins. So please get out there, vote for whichever candidate you believe can best lead your country. And for my Canadians, we do have an election coming up eventually. If you're in Saskatchewan, we have one coming up right away. I'm going to vote. I hope you all vote. Stay safe out there. Be kind with one another. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video.